very important for any ceramic restoration, not only for veneers, as you can see here. It's very important because it really has a direct link to the long-term success of the restoration. Okay, the problem is everybody is confused with cementation. Sometimes including myself. Why? Because there are so many different materials in the market, yeah? So many different materials. I showed you in the morning, we have very weak materials and very strong materials. So they are requiring different kind of cementation. So this is already difficult. Then you have, in addition, you have very different cementation materials. Okay? And you have different aesthetic requirement. You have different indication and you have different curing modes of those resin cementation materials. So the more factors we have combined, the more complicated it gets. So the goal of this presentation is to give you an idea and that you can get out of this confusion. Yeah? This is my goal in this lecture. Okay, you can see everybody is confused. So, it would be great if we just had one material. One easy material that we can use for everything. You can see all indications can be done with this. Yeah? Unfortunately, this is not for dentistry. This is for home working. Yeah? So we would like to have something like this also in dentistry, because then we could be more relaxed. However, so far we do have simplified systems. We have it, but they cannot fulfill everything. You know, they can fulfill some of the things quite good, but not everything. And so we need to make sure that we can. Actually, this video is a little bit blurred here. Doesn't matter. Anyway, this guy is actually bonding this old lady to the floor. But where's the sound, by the way? So it's just using a drop of glue. Okay, so, and this is also doing every material. Yeah? So we want to have the same thing. Yeah. The problem is now that one type of cement does not fit all clinical situations. That's the only problem here. Let's have a look. So what's the difference between conventional cementation and adhesive cementation? So here you can see when you want to build a wall, right? You have bricks and you have cement, right? But the cement here does not stick to the brick. There's no chemical bond. But you have parallel walls of the bricks, and in between those spaces are filled with the cement. So there's a certain friction between those bricks is created to fill the space, and that creates friction, and so the wall is stable. Okay? So this we also have in dentistry, right? You have your crown. You have almost parallel walls, and we have a cement, a conventional cement like a GIC or a phosphate cement in between. So the crown cannot move. If you change the angle, let's say 4 to 6 degrees, if you make it very tapered, then the crown will come off. Yeah? So because you don't have a chemical bond, you have just like some friction between almost parallel walls. This is how a wall works. But then, of course, if you are bonding, if you do an adhesive cementation, it is different. It's very different, right? So now we have micromechanical retention, which means inside the tubulus, inside the hybrid layer of the dentine, and we also have chemical bonding. depending on the bond, on the adhesive you are using, you can also create some chemical bonding. Okay, so now we have conventional cementation, adhesive cementation, and we also have self-adhesive materials. So now, of course, when you want to do like an adhesive, fully adhesive protocol, you need to apply a bonding agent on the tooth. It could be multiple step or it could be one step, it doesn't matter, but you have a separate bonding step on the tooth. And here you can see with self-adhesive materials, there is no separate bonding agent to be applied on the tooth. That's why it's called self-adhesive. Self-adhesive means there is a special chemical inside the cement that is generating the bond to the tooth, and you don't need a bonding agent, a separate bonding agent. Of course, this one is very convenient because you're actually speeding up the time. You're faster with this system. The question is, do you have the same performance of self-adhesive material and adhesive material? That's the question. And generally, when you talk about adhesion to the tooth, it is not the same. There is a big difference between conventional, self-adhesive, and fully adhesive protocol. So the highest bond strength you always get with a fully adhesive protocol. The lowest adhesion you get with conventional cement, and then there's an intermediate position of self-adhesive products. Okay? That's independent of the product you see here. This is valid for all products. Physical properties of the cement is also different. So we get higher physical strength of these materials which are applied fully adhesive. Okay, and you can see this also when we look at microscopically, when we look at the interface between the tooth, inside the tooth, you know, in the dentin, for example, you can see a hybrid layer. When we apply a bonding agent, we have a very defined hybrid layer inside the dentin. It's a mix of collagen and resin, as you know. Whereas if we just look at the hybrid layer when we use a self-adhesive material, it's not so clear, right? It's not so homogeneous hybrid layer. Okay, now let's have a look. By the way, we need the sound now. We need the sound here. So now let's do an experiment, okay? So we have a tooth stump, and we have a ceramic crown on the top that we have cemented here. So what we'll do is we use two different ceramic, and we use two different kind of cementation. Conventional cementation and adhesive cementation. And you can see here, this one is a feldspathic crown. If we load this until it fractures, okay, 600 newtons. Now we use the same feldspathic crown, but this one is bonded now. Adhesive cementation, almost 1,200. This one is Emax with the conventional cementation, and Emax which is bonded. Okay? It's very interesting because the force that we need to fracture is very different. So let's say a weak glass ceramic, conventionally cemented, is very weak. It can only withstand 614 newtons. But if we use the same feldspathic crown and we are bonding this in adhesive cementation, we can almost double the force that we need. So 1,179. But it's the same ceramic, but different cementation. If you have Emax, because Emax is much, much stronger, we can, even if we just use a conventional cementation, you can see we're already over 2,000 newtons fracture load. And if we are bonding Emax, we can further increase to 2,711 newtons. Okay? I think it's quite fascinating. Especially when we are working with weaker glass ceramics, like feldspathic or like Empress. It's very important that we are not cementing them conventionally. So we have to bond them in order to make them strong. Okay? Good. So, I would like to go through a couple of factors when we do the cementation, which are important for the longevity of the restoration. So first of all, we're looking at the strength of the restorative material. We're looking at the strength of the ceramic. This we have already done. Then we need to look at the type of preparation. Do we have a retentive preparation or a non-retentive preparation? Then we'll need to look at can we isolate the tooth so that we can do the bonding procedure. But sometimes it's not necessary. It's not possible to isolate the tooth, so that we maybe need to do a conventional cementation. Then, what about the aesthetics? What about the translucency of the restoration? And finally, I would like to explain a little bit about the curing mode of the resin cements. You know, there is light curing and self-curing and dual curing. All right, so when we look at the restorative material, we have already looked at this today. Remember this slide? Yeah, we have some very, very weak materials on the left side and some very strong materials like zirconia on the right side, and they require different cementation options. Yeah? So we have to be aware of this. So the weak materials, they have to be bonded, so only adhesive cementation possible. Then you have some very, very strong material like zirconia, and I would like to include Emax here. So these materials, which are very strong, you can do any kind of cementation that you like. That means you can do adhesive, self-adhesive, and conventional. But there is an asterisk. And that means the very new zirconia material, which is more translucent, but also weaker, you cannot do conventional cementation. Yeah? We have to be careful because we don't know exactly, we don't have enough clinical data for this new group of materials. But definitely Emax, you can cement however you like. You can even do conventional cementation with Emax. All right. So, what about this retentive or non-retentive? Retentive, yeah. That means if you don't have a lot of adhesion, you need to compensate with a retentive preparation. So let's say, remember, there's a big difference between the adhesion of these different materials, and this is why for these materials where you don't have so much adhesion, we need to compensate with the tooth preparation. In other words, if you want to do a conventional cementation or self-adhesive, you need to provide a retentive tooth preparation. Okay? If it's okay for you to do adhesive cementation, it doesn't matter. Yeah? Your prep doesn't need to be retentive. Okay, what does it mean, retentive? Retentive means if you want to do a crown preparation, you need to have at least 4 millimeter of length of your clinical stump. Your stump must be at least 4 millimeters, at least minimum. And you need to have a convergence angle of between 4 and 8 degrees, right? If you cannot do this, maybe you have there is already a crown preparation, and the crown preparation is too tapered. If you have a very tapered crown prep, you cannot do a conventional cementation. Then you have to swap to the adhesive cementation. Okay? So this is the criteria, And this is valid for conventional and also for self-adhesive cementation. So now, my question for you. Do you think that this preparation is retentive or non-retentive? What do you think? Okay, who thinks it's retentive? Please give me a hand. Who thinks retentive? Who thinks non-retentive? Okay, these are more. And overall, it's non-retentive, yeah? Maybe here you have some retentive pattern, a little bit of retention, but overall, so you would probably never cement this onlay with a GIC. Probably not, right? Because then the patient will lose it at some stage. The patient will come back to you and say, okay, can you please fix again? So because this is considered non-retentive, and at the same time, it's very easy to isolate because you have supragingival margin. So now we can easily isolate and we can bond it. So we'll do that. So we clean the restoration because there was a temporary. And so we just selectively etch the enamel. So nowadays, with a new bonding agent like tetric end bond universal, there is no need to etch the dentin. If you like to etch the dentin, you can do it, but there is no need to do it, yeah? So this is the best way, in my opinion, is to do selective enamel etch, which means we only etch the enamel for 20 seconds, then we rinse it off, and now we can apply the bonding agent. In case of tetric end bond universal, it's also self-etching, so we can apply this on the whole tool. So we scrub that in for 20 seconds, yeah, and then we blow this. Okay. So the good thing is with the tetric end bond universal, it contains MDP. So MDP is a chemical that not only bonds to zirconia, it also bonds to the tooth very nicely. So now we have MDP, and MDP can chemically connect to hydroxyapatite. Okay? But we should not remove hydroxyapatite from the dentin, for example with phosphoric acid. So if we don't etch phosphoric acid, if we don't etch the dentin with phosphoric acid, we have a better chance to get a chemical bond between MDP and hydroxyapatite. Okay, so now this is the pre-treatment of the Emax restoration. We use hydrofluoric acid for 20 seconds, and we rinse that off. You can see now we need a chemical bond to the ceramic. And we use a silane. You can see this is the silane methacrylate. So the silane methacrylate, for example, we have it in monobond N, and it can connect to the ceramic, and it also can connect to the cement. So the silane has two arms. One arm to the ceramic, and one arm to the cement, and holds it together. Okay? So now you can see, after etching the ceramic, it becomes like this, like a little frosty, whitish appearance after etching. So sometimes the lab is doing this, but maybe you can do it yourself, and then you can maybe save some money, I don't know. Depends on your discussion with a dental technician. So anyway, this silane here, the monobond N needs to be, or monobond plus, needs to be applied for 60 seconds. And that's it. And so the gold standard, as you know, is first to use hydrofluoric acid, this one. And then after that we can use a silane, like monobond. But you know, I mentioned already, HF, hydrofluoric acid, is very toxic, poisonous, and is very dangerous. If you get it in your eyes or on the skin, it can rapidly penetrate very deeply into the tissue and creating some severe damage. So that's why everybody in the dental office needs to be very cautious in handling. Yeah? So it would be better actually to have a one-step primer, which is actually not so dangerous. Now I need the sound. You can leave the sound on actually. So we can actually marry hydrofluoric acid and the silane. Like that, shake it. And then we have something in one bottle without hydrofluoric acid, which is a single component self-etching ceramic primer. And this is called monobond etch and prime. Okay, so this is actually etching, cleaning, and silanizing in one step. Yeah? But it does not contain hydrofluoric acid. Okay, so this is a very good idea. You just need to scrub it into the restoration. We scrub that in for 20 seconds, and then we are cleaning everything. So it's cleaning the whole thing. And now, of course, first of all, when we scrub it, we will get rid of all the contaminants on the surface. And we have a silane and we have a polyfluoride for etching. So the bluish particles is symbolizing the etchant, a polyfluoride, which is creating a rough surface on the ceramic. So it makes the surface rough. Now we can, after a waiting time of another 40 seconds, we can rinse it off and we dry this. You can see that's the water to rinse off the polyfluoride. And we can then dry it. And what you see now is the silane. So the silane is now creating the chemical bond to that surface. Yeah? So that's a clean, etched, and silanized surface. You can see this is the connection, chemical bond of the silane methacrylate with the ceramic surface. And this is how it works. And so, of course, this one is the gold standard. We know this works very well. This is a new product, so I want to know, is this as good as this? Then it's okay. If this is not so good, I will keep this. Okay. So let's have a look on the studies. I'll show you a little bit later some of the values. I just would like to go through in the clinical case. In this case, those pressed Emacs. So this Emacs has been pressed here and just a little bit stained and glazed, as you can see. There's no layering ceramic. Yeah, it's monolithic. It's just glazed and stained. That's it. And then we just remove the excess. Okay. And now you can see that's the bonding. So this one is the gold standard. So after 3 days of water storage, of course we have very high bond strength, but we need to age, we need to stress the interface. So that's why we're doing thermal cycling. 10,000 times we put the sample into cold, 5 degrees cold, in 55 degrees hot water. We do this 10,000 times to and fro. That means we are really stressing the interface. And you can see after another 30 days of water storage, of course, this is normal that the bond is decreasing. It's quite normal for all products. But you can see here now with the monobond plus and HF, which is very good. So we have about 70 megapascals. And with the new product, we have actually even more than 20. You can see here, more than 20 megapascals. So we have very good bonding values with the new monobond etch and prime. Okay, now we can clean up the interproximal area. It's very important clinically that you are not lifting. When you clean this with that floss, that you're not lifting up the restoration. Because otherwise you might have air entrapped, and that's not good. That can cause sensitivity. So we need to be careful. Before we do the final polymerization, we always need to apply an air block. That means some glycerin gel is applied around the margin so that we don't have direct contact with air. Okay? Have you heard about this? Have you heard about this before? It's called oxygen inhibition problem. We don't want to have oxygen inhibition. The idea is, because resins, when they are exposed to air on the surface, they will not completely set, they will not completely polymerize in the presence of air. So if we get rid of the air, they can completely polymerize. If we have contact with air, they will not completely polymerize. And that is a problem if this happens directly at the margin. Okay, so now you can see here, very interesting and good picture. You can see, do you see a color difference between here and here? Can you see? Yes? So here on the surface you have contact with air. And on that side you have no contact with air, because that surface is covered with an air block, with glycerine. Okay? Okay, now all this area, this is a cement, a self-curing cement. If you are in contact with air, this is not completely polymerized. So you're looking at about 265 microns of thickness, which is not hard. It's only greasy. Yeah? So if this happens on your margin, that's no good, because this is not stable. It will wear off. Yeah? That's why we need to cover with glycerine, because with glycerine everything is polymerized, everything is hard. And this is the case with all products. Every product, every cementation product has the same problem, because it's resin. Right? So now what we do is, okay, this is what we want to have. If you apply an air block on your margin, you can see this one is your restoration, this one is the tooth, and this one is your cement line. This one, yeah? So you have a continuous connection between the tooth and the restoration if you apply an air block on the surface before curing. If you do not do this, you have something like this. Because here the cement line is not completely cured, so it will wear off from you. You have a catch. And that's very bad, because you have a rough surface, so you might have more plaque accumulation, more discoloration, and maybe also more caries. Maybe. So I would like to avoid this, and I rather want to achieve this result here. And it's very easy to do. So what you do is, you do the cleanup, and before you do the light curing, you need to apply an air block around your margin. So the air block is very simple, it's a glycerine gel, okay? So this one is just an air block. It's a glycerine gel that we can apply on the margin. So you can easily apply and also rinse it off again, because it's water soluble. Okay, we apply this at the margin before the final light curing. So we do the final light curing, and then this just a little bit of polishing afterwards. Everything is done. So it's a little thing that can have a large influence on the final aesthetics and on the final quality of the restoration. Okay, now this, you can see this is the final result. It's all monolithic, no problem. Now we come back to the tabletops. Maybe you have seen this before. So do you think this is retentive or non-retentive? No? No, no retentive, yeah? If you try to cement this with a GIC, patient will come back after a few weeks. So non-retentive, but it's also okay to isolate, it's no problem. And you can see we do this step by step. Again, this is the pressed version of Emacs. You can see a little bit of stain and glaze. Yeah, the dental technician used a little bit of white stain here, but it's fine. Yeah, it looks good. So this is before and after. Oh, okay. Now laptop is waking up. Laptop was sleeping a little bit. I hope you don't do the same thing. Okay, now let's have a look on the location of the preparation margin, because that gives you an idea if you can do bonding procedure or if the bonding will be not so predictable. In any case, we want to have a clean surface. We don't want to have a contaminated surface, because this will decrease the adhesion. This will definitely decrease the bond strength, and that's why we need to isolate. Yeah, of course, the best way to isolate is to use a rubber dam. I showed you that the Optident Plus is very easy to apply. Maybe, I don't know if we have an opportunity, maybe I can show you this live, how easy this is. Otherwise, we can do a workshop one day, and I'll show you to do this step by step, because this is so easy and for the patient also quite convenient, because, you know, sometimes for a longer period of time, patient needs to open the mouth, and this one is helping the patient to open the mouth. Yeah, so it's quite convenient for him. So, but you can see a lot of studies. Actually, it's not so important how you isolate exactly, but it's important that you don't have contamination. Yeah, so it's very important, because there are other methods of isolation that also work well. For example, with the Ultragate, you can combine the Ultragate, of course, with cotton rolls and with suction. And you also will get good results together with this. Okay, so I think, yeah. So you can see now, in a situation like this, what do you think? Is it easy to isolate? No, not at all. You know, I cleaned everything up. I took the picture and it was already bleeding again, right? And sometimes it's so difficult to isolate. And these were some pre-existing crowns that were subgingival. Now, of course, we can do like a crown lengthening. It's one option, but there may be some patients not so happy about the crown lengthening procedure. So it's always good if you have, alternatively, if you have the option for conventional cementation. But conventional cementation only can be done with strong ceramics. So you should not do it with feldspathic materials or Empress, for example. But you can do with Emacs. With Emacs, we can do conventional cementation. That's one of the great things with Emacs. So in this case, I want to do, okay, that's what I say, I want to do a conventional cementation, yeah? So we go for conventional cementation because we have a subgingival margin. And you can see these are lab-made. So the dental technician produced these Emacs crowns, but he didn't press it, he just kept cam, right? So he used the Emacs CAD here. Okay, now we just use a GIC. Ivoclar also has a GIC. It's called Ivoclar Sen. So we do this kind of very easy to do conventional cementation. So this is the seating. You can see all the excess here, but of course the excess can be removed with a scaler very easily. And then this is the final result with Emacs CAD, just conventionally cemented. So this is possible with Emacs because Emacs is strong enough to do that. Okay, but sometimes, especially for inlays, there's another technique where we can have a better cementation, and this is called box elevation technique. Have you heard about this before? Box elevation or margin relocation technique? Okay, this is something very new, I will tell you. Okay? So this is a very good tool. It has been described in many papers already. Sometimes they have a little bit different name, but they mean all the same. So it means that if you have a very deep subgingival margin, you do like a composite filling, and you actually lift the subgingival margin into a supragingival margin. And then on top of this, you can cement your restoration. Okay? It's called proximal margin elevation. And of course, this one is a study from University of Zurich in Switzerland. Because when I was at the university, when I was a student, they said, you should not do it. You should not do it. Your restoration always needs to be resting on the natural tooth. Never on composite. Okay? But when I studied, it was already more than 25 years ago. Everything has changed now. Dentistry is always changing. So now, we can do it. But of course, I only do it if I know I have the same marginal quality with the new technique compared to the, let's say, when the restoration is directly on the tooth. So this is why they have done some inlays, CEREC inlays, and they have done it on MOD cavities, on natural teeth. Okay, they have cemented this. Let me explain this to you. This was the control group. So this is the ceramic when it's directly in dentine. But maybe this is very subgingival, so maybe I cannot cement very controlled. So now this is what they did is, they made a box elevation with composite, with one layer, or that means a 3 millimeter layer, or 2 layers with composite, but then the ceramic is sitting on the composite. And what they've done now is they have looked at the margin equality, in percent, the perfect margin. So this one comparing the control group and the new technique. Okay? And you can see now the blue bar is before thermomechanical loading. So they age it, they stress the interface. So the blue one is about 90% before TML, and the red bar is after TML. And you can see there's no difference, no statistical difference between the restoration sitting directly on dentine, on the right side, or with a new technique, box elevation technique. So we have the same quality, marginal quality, okay? And that's good for me, because this is what I want to achieve. Okay, good. So this is good. Now, I would like to show you this case, and we do it together, step by step, okay? But first, we have a coffee break. Is that correct? So we have a short coffee break, and then I show you interesting clinical cases where we do the new technique together, step by step.